Hey hosers, welcome back to Casual Gardening with Dustin, unless this is your first time here, in which case, welcome. I hope you stick around. Today we're focusing on some perennial foods and herbs that you can grow in containers. If you watch to the end, I'm going to give some general tips on how to get the most out of your container garden. Number one, and probably one of the more obvious ones, is going to be strawberries. You can grow strawberries in containers. That's why they have them in containers that hang at the big box store, right? If you are in zone 7 and up, you're going to have success with this year after year. But if you're in zone 6 like I am, you might struggle to keep your strawberries from year to year. And this is because, as a rule of thumb, you want to add 2 to the zone that you can grow in when you're growing perennials in pots. And strawberries are hardy down to zone 5. And so here in zone 6, I'd say there's a 50-50 chance of my strawberries dying if I leave them in a pot over the winter. So if I were to grow them here, I'd take them in my garage. In cooler climates, like actually maybe this one, you could do everbearing or day-neutral strawberries. Those are going to give you, for everbearing, you're going to get 2 to 3 harvests throughout the year. For day-neutral strawberries, you are going to get, well, they don't care. They'll just keep producing flowers and fruits. If you're growing in containers, you're probably just growing for the occasional treat, not for a big harvest, and those are great for that. However, if you're in a warmer climate, you are going to be stuck with the June-bearing varieties because everbearing and day-neutral do not deal well with the heat. So tough luck there, guys. It is almost necessary to grow blueberries in a container, and this is because they require very acidic soil. So if you fire up your blueberries in a pot, you are more likely to be able to provide them with the soil quality that they require to thrive. Unfortunately, if you live somewhere with neutral to basic soil, you're probably also going to have some alkaline tap water. Alkaline water mythology aside, it's not great for your blueberries. It will gradually increase the pH of the soil they're in. So if you're growing blueberries in pots, remember 2 very important things. You're going to want to regularly add pH adjuster to your soil to counteract the effect of the basic tap water you're very likely watering them with. I would especially be doing that here. And thing number 2 is that there are blueberries for different climates. So if you're in a warmer climate, you're probably going to want to get the lowland varieties. If you're in a cooler climate like mine, you're going to go for the highland varieties. Like I'd probably go with a northern high bush. So the blueberry you go with should be adapted to the climate that you're in. And luckily, we have options. Number 3 is another one that you almost have to grow in a pot, and that is mint. Now mint, if you don't grow it in a pot, it will go a Viking and take over territory in your garden or wherever you put it. But mint in a pot is going to offer a couple of benefits. You can control the nutrients a little bit, so it's not going to go rampant quite as much. You've got it all right there where it's easy to access, probably right by your door. So you can go out and keep it picked back so that instead of flowering, it keeps producing those big yummy leaves for you. And you keep it contained, which I'm going to have to say all members of the mint family need to be kept contained. The 4th one, and this one's good zones 5 and up, is going to be chives. Chives are going to rock out in a container if you want to grow them. They are a really great plant. They're beautiful, they're delicious. I'm excited to grow me some chives probably next year because I'm just moving into this garden and I don't have everything I want yet. If you are growing in zones 7 and up, so this is again going to be an issue for me if I try it, you can grow oregano in a container. And actually, oregano is another one of those herbs that you want to keep contained because it's going to be fine for 2 or 3 or even 5 years. It's going to act pretty chill in your garden. But if you don't have it in a pot, just like a mint, it's going to start to go a Viking. It's going to spread out. And I mean, it's a delicious plant to cut back, so that may not be an issue. But oregano is hardy down to zone 5. If you are zone 5 and up, well, zone 5 to 7, grow it in the ground. Zone 7 and up, grow it in a pot. If you are in zones 9 plus, so not most of us, you can grow rosemary in a pot. I'm in zone 6 and I'm going to grow rosemary in a pot anyway, and I'll tell you why. It's because in zone 6, Since rosemary is only hardy down to zone 7, if I try to grow it in the ground, it'll die. Here in Logan, Utah, we tend to grow rosemary as an annual, but I don't want that. I want a bigger rosemary than I can grow in a year. So my plan is I'm going to pop it in a pot, and then I'm going to move my pot into my sunroom in the winter. That's a thing you can do with pots, is you can take them indoors. So it actually can really bump up the variety of plants you can grow. Rosemary and oregano both like free draining soils, so that's another thing that's easier to give them in a pot. I would recommend a citrus/cactus mix if you are buying your soil. If you're mixing your own potting soil, include a lot of extra perlite or sand or both. Those of us who are growing in zones 5+, so that includes me, could put thyme in a pot if you wished. Thyme is hardy down to zone 3, so it's pretty stinking incredible and delicious. There is nothing like having herbs right by your kitchen that you can just go out to and put fresh herbs to season your food from. And not only that, but it's so much cheaper than buying fresh herbs at the grocery store. Herbs are one of those things that if you are going to grow them in containers, they will pay for themselves. Zones 9+ again, you could grow artichokes in a container. I would recommend like a half barrel if you're going to grow artichokes in a container, because they're big. These are actually kind of a thistle. They like free draining soil. You're going to want to let them dry out a little bit between waterings. But the reason I might choose to grow artichokes in a pot, even though I live in zone 6, is again, my winters get too cold here in Logan, Utah to overwinter artichokes. So I could take my pot of artichokes and move it into the garage during the colder parts of the seasons and then pop it back outside when things are warmed up. There are many reasons that you might choose to grow artichokes in a pot or container, not just because you can only grow things in a container. Zones 5 and up, if you choose, you could grow some rhubarb in a container. This is another one that is going to require a bigger container. So I have grown it in a half barrel because I had a tree stump in my old garden, and it was a big tree stump that I could fit a half barrel on. And I thought, well, if I put a pot on the tree stump, then the water from watering whatever's growing in the pot is going to get in there and help the tree stump rot away a little bit faster. And also it's an attractive stand for my pot. So I put some rhubarb there. Even though I had plenty of room in my garden, I could have grown rhubarb in the ground. It just looked nice. Rhubarb is a beautiful plant, hardy down to zone 3. And the last one on my list, if you are in zones 7 and up, you can probably find some lavender that you can grow in a pot. This is not one that you necessarily eat, although I think there are some recipes that call for lavender, not a lot. So zone 7 and up, you can grow lavender in a pot. Probably it would do okay in a pot this size. Those are 10 things, 10 perennials that you can grow in pots that we consume in some way. If you're still here, first of all, thank you. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel and, you know, get all chatty in my comments so YouTube knows that you're interested in me. So here are some tips for how to get the most out of your container garden. Since you're still here, bonus for you. Tip number 1, you can rig up a drip irrigation system for containers. I've got a video on it. Here's a card. The benefit of drip irrigation is that you will find that your containers dry out a lot faster than growing stuff in the ground. It is necessary to water them probably daily during the height of the summer, and in a small enough container you may need to go twice a day. Because of that, tip number 2, you're going to want to stay on top of your fertilizer. You're only going to be able to have so much nutrition in a pot. And beyond that, you are going to find that these fast-growing plants like oregano and thyme that we like to grow in pot, well, thyme you might not need to feed very much. Oregano grows fast. Rhubarb is a heavy feeder. Anything that grows a lot of foliage for you is going to use up the nutrients in the pot really fast. And you're going to want to give it fertilizer at least once a month. Some of them maybe even once every couple weeks. If you're doing liquid, if you're doing a slow release fertilizer every month to 2 months. If it's a foliage plant, just give it something that's either higher nitrogen or balanced. If you're growing for fruit, you want for sure balanced. That will help you get the most out of your container, and then you won't be stuck with sad little anemic looking plants. Another thing to keep in mind growing in a container is take full advantage of what that does for you. One thing that a container can do that in-ground planting cannot is that you can move it readily without disturbing the plant. And what this means for you is that throughout the year, as the situation changes where you live, the temperatures and humidity or whatever, you can actually move your container to take full advantage of conditions in different parts of wherever you're growing. Finally, make sure that you're choosing a container that is appropriate for the size that your plant is going to get to this year. It's okay to repot, but you don't want to be repotting a lot. That's just a pain. Just make sure that you do enough research into what you're growing that you are putting it in an appropriate container. Thank you for joining me here in my garden next to my beautiful cherry tomatoes. I hope you had a great time, and I hope you have a wonderful time in your own garden.